Russia stepping up the bombardment of Kyiv and other Ukrainian cities just hours after talks concluded between the two countries in Belarus, with no clear sign forward for peace, but an agreement to continue talking.
Diplomacy at the barrel of a gun, diplomacy at the turret of a tank, that is not real diplomacy. We are ready and willing, just as our Ukrainian partners are, just as our European allies are, to engage in real, in substantive, in genuine diplomacy in order to see if we can find a way out of what is a needless, brutal conflict. But that diplomacy is highly unlikely to bear fruit, to prove effective, in the midst of not only confrontation, but escalation.
Ukrainians have resisted the much stronger Russian military up until now. The Kremlin has committed 75% of the troops built up at the border in recent months. And while Putin has so far failed to capture any major cities, the Pentagon warned Monday that could change.
You got to hand it to the Ukrainians, who have been fighting very hard for their country and making an impact and making a dent on Mr. Putin's abilities. But they will learn. The Russians will learn from this.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called on the U.S. and allies to consider a no-fly zone over Ukraine, a move the former Ukrainian Prime Minister told VOA was needed.
What we really need today is to be protected from the air, in the sense of simply shooting down missiles that fly on us from Russia, not allowing Russian fighter planes to enter the airspace. Just keep us from being destroyed from the air.
The Pentagon said there were no plans to enforce a no-fly zone, but the U.S. and allies did take several unprecedented steps over the weekend to cut off Russia from global financial services. Top congressional Republicans say those actions from the White House came too late.
This weekend, the administration rushed to announce another $350 million in military assistance. For which weapons? On what timeline? And how will the weapons reach the brave Ukrainians who've lost ground? So Congress must use its oversight tools to ensure we are providing Ukraine the weapons it needs as quickly as possible. The same goes for helping to shore up our NATO allies' defenses along the eastern flank.
And while President Biden has repeatedly promised that the United States will not commit ground troops to the conflict, the White House said Monday there were still options for punishing Putin, including financial.
We always have more we can do, but I would say that what we're seeing in terms of the impact on the financial markets in Russia is significant. And I outlined some of the impacts, of course, on the ruble, on inflation, on central bank lending there in Russia. All of these steps squeeze not just President Putin, but squeeze the people around him and have a huge devastating impact on the economy. And they are more significant.
But the cost of the war is already sweeping across Europe. The United Nations announcing more than 520,000 Ukrainians had fled the country in just the 5 days since the Russian invasion began.
I have rarely seen such an incredibly fast rising exodus of people. The largest, surely, within Europe since the Balkan Wars.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken announced an additional $54 million in aid Sunday to address the humanitarian crisis. Katherine Gypson, VOA News, Washington.